gonna jump on into it. I'm just starting. That's how I like to do it. That's how I like to start my streams. As I say, I'm just starting, and then it starts, and then I'm doing it. Good morning. I'm Max. This is my 2-bit 2 cents, and this is my 2-bit Sunday morning podcast. And you might be saying to yourself right now, it's not morning time right now, at least not where I am, but it's morning somewhere. So that's good enough for me. Here's my cup of coffee, and I hope you're doing well today somehow. The world's gone crazy, but what you gonna do about it? As you may or may not know, as I've said before, I happen to live in Minneapolis, and though this is mostly a gaming channel, a lot of crazy stuff happening in my backyard these days. So, I don't know, I feel inclined to at least bring it up occasionally, and I'm going to bring it up right now. It's not going to be the whole episode, it's only going to be for a minute, but I just want to give a shout out to my city of Minneapolis. Proud of the way that we turned out yesterday and the way we didn't turn out. A basically peaceful but firm protest, and I'm proud of them for that. So big ups to my hometown and the people who live in it. Moving on from that, hello Parker. Hope you're doing well. Hope the wisdom tooth isn't bothering you too much. Trying out a podcast, I thought, what if I talked about stuff on a podcast instead of rambling by myself in a dark corner? So here we are. That's what I'm doing. That's mostly a joke. I don't ramble by myself in a dark corner. I make my family suffer through that. I just thought it would be a good day to talk about the importance of buying disc-based media. Now, before you want to just like run away and hide and pretend that we're not talking about that, don't know what your feelings about disc-based media are, but it's actually really important, and it used to be a really important part of the financial ecosystem for the film industry on a whole, and it's actually a big part of why the film industry has become such a uncreative place. And I just thought it would be good to talk about that because I don't really hear people talk about it enough. I hear people debate about, should you or shouldn't you use DVDs or streamings or whatever, and but I don't really hear people get into to why it would be important in the first place. And then I feel like once that's understood, a real conversation could be had about it, but I just don't hear that conversation happening. So, quick input about it, a little history lesson about disc-based media. So when and analog media on a whole, I think it's called analog media. Trying to sound smart here, but in any case, when VHS tapes came out back in the day, it created a new revenue stream for film publishers to make money. When it first happened, they were worried that people wouldn't go to the movie theaters anymore, and so they were really timid about releasing things to the public to buy. But once they realized they could make a lot of money, they were like, hey, let's do that a lot. And in fact, they were making so much money that they were actually able to recoup losses on films that were not successful at the box office in the movie theater by releasing them on tape. And because people would buy them there, and there were movies that were actually box office failures that would turn around and become successes on video. And so suddenly your failures are becoming wins, and that suddenly means you're having a lot more wins even when it seems like you might have had a failure. And that made it possible for those publishers to take risks, right? That made it possible for them to go, hey, just because this might not be successful at the movie theater doesn't mean it's not going to be able to find an audience after it comes out. So because that potential revenue stream existed, they were able to release things that they wouldn't normally release. They could make films that were not necessarily promised to do well at the box office. And then those would find homes somewhere else. And then they could take risks on filmmakers and creative people as well. Like, you think of somebody like Jim Carrey, right? Jim Carrey exists because, as a movie star, because a publisher was willing to take a risk on his movie, on Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, which is a bizarre film if you've ever seen it. It's just the whole concept of the film is insane. And then Jim Carrey is just like a cartoon character in that. Like, he's going off all over the place. And people looked at that movie. His friends looked at that movie. Like David Alan Grier, who he did In Living Color with, it said to Jim he thought it was going to be a failure. He said he felt bad for him. He said he liked the movie. It was funny. He thinks Jim's hilarious, but he just thought that that's never going to find an audience, right? But they were able to take that risk on him because not only did it find an audience, but it was a huge box office success, right? Nobody would have predicted that looking at it would be a box office success, but because they felt safer taking a risk on a movie about a guy who looks for people's pets as a detective, like a professional police detective, but he's played like this by this guy. They could go, all right, we can roll the dice on that, because maybe that'll make up some money later on video rentals and VHS purchases. And so they did that, and then it turned into be a success nobody saw coming, right? And so that freed them up to take risks, and suddenly big movies we remember, oh, they were so creative back then. That was possible because of that risk existing. And that's basically gone now. And we'll get to that in a minute. I just want to talk about other people for a second and situations where they were able to take a risk on somebody because they felt comfortable doing that. Another person is Kevin Smith. If you like Kevin Smith or anybody that he does, that whole thing was a risk for Miramax, and he was able to have a career basically because he was able to establish that kind of cult audience. I don't think any of his films broke the box office ever, but he created an entire career of selling VHSs to people and being successful that way. And that's why the studios kept making his movies, not because they were blowing up the box office, but because they knew they could rely on the after box office money coming in. And so you have sort of a legendary underground filmmaker, regardless of how you feel about his films. That possibility existed for people back then, and you could carve out your niche that way and be in the public eye like that. It's much harder to do that the way that things are set up now, as an independent creative person. Another person who has a career because they were willing to take risks. Two of, I think, the best filmmakers in the modern era have careers because studios took risks on them because they were quirky and weird. And that's Quentin Tarantino and Paul Thomas Anderson. And I'm not trying to have that debate about who's better there, but they exist because studios took risks on them. Quentin Tarantino was a friggin' weirdo who was writing in a notebook, like straight across the page, like totally informal writing style for movie scripts. And they're looking at these like scripts, and they're going, are we gonna make Reservoir Dogs? Like, look at how he's written this. Like, yeah, it's good, I guess, but I mean, look, is he really like gonna be professional enough? Is he gonna make this movie? And he wants to direct it. He's not gonna let us change anything. I don't know. Like, do we want to give a guy like this that much control? They were very apprehensive, and but they took the risk on him. And then look, that opened the door for a legendary filmmaker. They weren't worried about whether Quentin Tarantino was going to be able to make a box office superhero movie, right? Well, is this guy going to, which is more the standard now. If you can't make a box office superhero movie, then what are you even really doing with your life? Good morning, sir. Hope you're doing well, Matt. Welcome. We're talking DVDs. We're talking how they support the industry. Yeah, so Tarantino has a career. Good morning. Because studios could take those kinds of risks. And same with Paul Thomas Anderson. The movie Boogie Nights was not promised to be a successful movie. It was a comedy ish movie about the sex industry. Like, that was not guaranteed to be a success at all. Nobody was thinking, oh, Boogie Nights, that's going to be an Oscar-nominated film for sure. But they looked at him and they thought, we can gamble on Paul Thomas Anderson because he's an interesting creative person. Excuse me, an interesting creative person, and maybe, just maybe, that will turn into something like, later. Like maybe, and if it's not, well, it's okay. We'll recoup our losses on VHS sales, and it'll all work out fine and dandy. And so that ecosystem promoted creativity because it allowed publishers to take risks with their money, right? And they were able to take risks they weren't able to take before, which is why in the 90s especially there's just a boom of creativity that was going on, and all these big filmmakers found space in that time period of time. James Cameron and um, others, I had like a list in my head, but there are, and it's because of that reality, and the way that it is now. Without that, a movie can only be successful really if it either blows up at the box office and gets like $500 million there and is setting records, or it somehow is driving streaming subscriptions, people subscribing. It doesn't really improve their overall sales numbers to have the same people subscribing. Like, in order for the capitalism of it to work, they have to constantly be growing their subscribership, or a thing doesn't really have value because that's where they're making new money, right? Um, and so unless a thing is driving those revenue streams, either subscriptions or literally showing up to brick and mortar theaters and watching it there, paying for a ticket, it's basically a bust, right? There is no backdoor revenue. Like, maybe we can rent this out a little bit to some streaming services here or there before it totally loses steam, and then we'll just erase it forever. It'll just never exist anymore because it's not profitable, right? So suddenly, a thing that could have had a life after death for decades suddenly becomes completely unprofitable after less than a year of being available to the public, simply because it didn't catch on immediately and make $500 million. And that stifles creativity. That makes publishers nervous. We can't just be putting money into anything else. And I'm not trying to advocate for the corporations here, but there was a balance in the ecosystem of the whole thing, that everything kind of supported everything else, that is different now. And that's the problems. And publishers need to be able to take risks to promote creativity. They need to be able to take those risks to promote creativity. And when the risk is so high for a thing to be successful, this is either going to make us money or it's just going to lose us a bunch of money. Suddenly they can't take those risks. They need to look at numbers, which is why everything is run through a focus group, and you have movies by committee, and you have all them going, well, what's testing well, what's working, what's not working, and let's try and do that, because anything that isn't a slam dunk is scary. It's a potential risk, and it's, even though the evidence bears out that that's not how it works, it's difficult to know what's going to work and what's not. Just because they take a risk on somebody doesn't mean they're going to turn into Paul Thomas Anderson or Quentin Tarantino either, right? Those have a lower percentage of working out like that very often, right? I don't know what the percentage is, but the point is that it is a low percentage thing, but they can take that risk, and meaning that can pay off later. I think I'm being clear. I'm kind of getting lost in the weeds there for a moment, but we have to get back to an ecosystem that's like that, because if the companies at the top keep hoarding IP and hoarding IP so that they can have a streaming service and try to get everybody locked in a month, it's just going to keep draining the life out of everything. They're just going to keep doing more and more things to try and appeal to the broader audience, and they're not going to make as many interesting films. And even the most interesting films that are being made now are being made by, what is that company? A24, right? Like, there aren't studios out there that are willing to make creatively interesting films that are mainstream studios anymore. And we can get back to that simply by buying DVDs. Now, this comes around to the whole point. You can support the DVD industry by buying, I think what it said is you can buy a one DVD every year or every 3 months or something. Like, if you bought like a very small amount of discs every year, 3 or 4 even, you would do enough to support that entire industry, and it would start to change the landscape of things, right? It would suddenly make it reasonable. And I think that push is coming back. When I did happen to look on Amazon recently, Amazon has promoted a lot of new special edition DVDs that you can buy. Now, I'm not saying you necessarily have to buy on Amazon, although Amazon is one of the only places you can buy discs that I'm aware of anymore, at least online. They're very hard to find in brick and mortar stores, although I have found some at Barnes & Noble. if you still have a Barnes and Noble in your area. Um, but they're hard to find. Either go to a store, which would be better, or buy from Amazon some kind of disc. But Amazon is supporting it. That's what I was going to say. That's interesting because they're coming up with exclusive DVD like steelbooks that you can buy from them, and you may or may not care about it. But what it says about the industry is that big corporations still recognize that there's money to be made there, and if we support that, we could start to get back to something we started to lose when Netflix started streaming stuff. And we started becoming overly reliant on that. It's really not the most efficient way to watch a thing. It's one of the lowest quality ways you can absorb content. Some of you may not care about that as many as others, but if you're somebody who likes things to look as good as they can, whether you're watching on your phone or your tablet or your TV or your computer or whatever the fuck you're watching on, generally you like it to look as good as you can. And a lot of times you can't do that when you're streaming a thing unless you have a file. And there's no reason for you to have a file if you don't own the product. But it used to be that if you owned a DVD or you owned a CD, you could take that and you could put that on your computer and you could turn that into a file. And we didn't end up morphing into a society where people did that and then they put that on their phone. We started to become that, and then the corporations were like, I don't know if we want you to have that much power. I don't know if we feel comfortable with you having that much control over what you're listening to and how you're listening to it, and having ownership over this. Because when you own it, you're able to do things with it that are outside of our creative control, and we don't like that. We don't want you to be able to do that. And so they started pulling back on that. Like, I used to buy a CD and put that immediately on my computer, and then I would rip a disc of it, and then I'd have that. And I also had my iPod thing, and you put the songs on there, and I had every song in my entire CD collection in my pocket, right? And I owned that. That was mine. That was mine. They couldn't change that. They couldn't, even if they went in and changed every file on my iPad on the next update, I could take my disc out and I could put that back on, and I could re-rip that song back onto my thing because I had the song. It was mine, and they can't change it on my disc. I had that. That was power. That was fucking power that we had, and they are taking that from us. There's a whole generation of you out there right now that don't even understand what that's like. And that's exactly what they want. Like, it's not by accident they made it difficult for you to be able to get a CD player or to get a DVD player, that they stopped installing those things on televisions, which were things you used to be able to buy before. Now, one of the only ways you can buy a DVD player is if you buy a video game console. They still exist, by the way. You can buy a thing that plays DVDs, old Blu-rays, and modern 4K discs. That's just a regular player. They exist. They're not being made by Sony really very much anymore that I'm aware of, but they're out there. Same with CD players. And all they need to believe is that there is a market for this, and people will do it. And there's a market for vinyl. There's got to be a market for people who want freedom of their things. Like, you could take a movie. There's no reason you shouldn't now be able to do what I was doing with my music today. That should be the easiest shit in the world. I want to watch a thing, and I should be able to go to my computer or to my tablet and be like, hey, that's mine. I downloaded that, that's mine, and I own it, and now I can have that on anything I want. That shouldn't be outrageous. And if you prefer not having discs everywhere, I get that. But you know what's wrong? Is that you don't own what you're purchasing. You don't own that. You don't have the right to take that and do things with it. They can take that from you anytime you want. And they're taking money out of the artists' pockets by doing that. That's the other thing, is the artists made money on these things. The artists made money on their CDs getting sold, and sometimes even on DVD sales. They made money on that. Going on and on and on and on. Even now, today, if you're a songwriter, if you're a musician, if you're Snoop Dogg, you're not even clearing $10,000 a month on Spotify. You're not even clearing $10,000 a month. And that's if you're Snoop Dogg. That's if you're fucking Snoop Dogg. Something's wrong. Like, they have specifically tried to sap all the power out of creatives, artists, and consumers, and they're hoarding it all for themselves. And it's killed creativity. And as long as we keep supporting bad creative decisions and keep allowing them to consolidate their power more and more and more by solely supporting streaming services and not purchasing things for ourselves, then we're really doing ourselves a disservice, because that's what they want to do. They want to take our power away. They want to take your ability to have a computer away. They have been trying to make it. Computers used to be affordable. Now you have to be a rich person to buy a computer. Do you think that that's an accident? It's not an accident. They want you to not be able to afford a computer. That's why they want graphics cards to cost you $10,000. That's why they want RAM to cost $5,000. That's why they want a computer to cost $25,000 to build, because they don't want you to be able to afford them. They want to be unaffordable, make it unaffordable to anybody who isn't ultimately rich. That's what they want. Because if people have power, if people have access to their own AI, if people have the ability to do these things, then that's too much. Then they can't pull their agenda off on us. And we just can't let it happen. How we support these things, how we interact with these things are so important. And we really, one of the most powerful things we can do is where you spend your money, and showing where you're willing to spend your money and where you're willing to not spend your money. And that's the most powerful thing you can do. I mean, it's even more powerful than voting. If enough people do it, if enough people say, I'm not going to pay for that, if enough people say, I am going to pay for this, then that changes what the companies are willing to do, right? They've only, and this is the part we have to accept. We are complicit in this whole thing. We have, all of us, leaned in to these perceived conveniences of having streaming available to us, and you know, having Netflix and having Spotify and, you know, Xbox Game Pass and you know, whatever Sony's thing is, and blah blah blah. We've all participated in it, right? They sold us something that seemed really enticing. I'm not blaming any of us for it, but we do have to wake up to the reality of it. We have to wake up to the fact that we have allowed them to take so much power because we continue to support it. And we have to look in the mirror and accept that. Each of us have supported it in our own way, and enough of us have done that have let it get kind of out of control. It's out of control. And they're going to keep pushing the envelope on it as long as we keep saying we're willing to pay it, even if the price is unreasonable, even if the rights we're giving up are unreasonable, even if what they're doing is morally reprehensible. If we keep giving them money, they're going to keep doing it, because we're going to say, you know what, we're okay with that. We're okay with you infringing on my personal rights. I'm okay with you infringing on my privacy. I'm okay with you taking my right to own what I've paid for away from me. I'm okay with that. I'm going to keep paying you to say that that's okay, and to keep doing that. And we have to look in the mirror and say, we're not going to do that anymore. I'm going to participate by putting my dollars into excuse me, by putting my dollars into other things. And you know, that's the thing. That's the good and bad thing about acknowledging that a problem is you, that you are part of the problem, that you have helped create a problem, whether it's a personal problem in your own life or a broader problem like this, is that when you are the cause of the problem, it hurts. And that's part of why it's hard to accept. But when you are the cause, you are also the solution. If you have done something, if you have done something to cause the problem, then that means you can do something to create a solution. So it's actually the best kind of problem to solve. You can't solve something that's attacking you from the outside. You can't make something from the outside do something different than what it's going to do. It's going to do what it's going to do, but you can decide what you're going to do. And you can change what you've been doing. If you have been doing something that's caused the problem, you can do something different to make it better. And we as a collective, as the gaming community, and as a society broadly, because it's not just about gaming, this is about everything in our economy. If we can come together and say, you know what, we're not going to do that. We're just not going to invest in that anymore. then that's going to speak louder than anything. If you hate AI, do not engage with it in any way. If you question if we're giving too much power over to AI, don't invest in it. If you're against the way that Spotify and Netflix and people are damaging creativity in our industries and taking power away from the artists and the consumers, then do something about it. Stop listening to Spotify. Stop streaming all your music. There are ways to listen to your music if you buy them on CDs, if you're willing to find them out. I'm not even saying it's always the easiest way to do it, but there are ways. Or if you prefer, you can buy vinyls. And a lot of vinyls these days have downloads for the vinyl. So if you have a smart device and the right apps, I don't know all the apps you need, you have to do some research, but I know that it exists. There are ways to support physical media that more directly support our artists, that can make the art valuable again, that can make the artists more money, that support creativity in our industries, that publishers and companies will listen to and sign on to. If we are willing to show, we will support it, right? And I understand maybe there are people who feel like they can't do that, but if you are somebody who feel like that you can, I think that you should. I think that you should support physical media. If you think you can afford to buy a $15 DVD, a $20 DVD, you should, and you hear what I'm saying, you should do that. If you did that 2-3 times a year, you would be helping revitalize that particular part of our creative industries, and that in the long run is going to make a huge difference, especially if you're supporting things that you liked that came out and didn't do particularly well. I'm sure we all have movies where we saw it and we thought that was a great movie, and nobody saw it. Nobody went to the theater to see it. It hardly even had a theater run, and it was a massive box office failure. But I caught it when it came to services, and I liked it, so I went and I bought it. Go buy it. You saw it, you liked it, go buy it. Go buy it. Play it on your PlayStation or your Xbox or something. Millions of you have them, I know you do. Even if you just have a PS3 or a PS4, pop that shit in there. It'll play. It'll work. It'll look and sound great. You never have to worry about buffering. You're going to have a solid picture, the best possible picture you can have the entire time. The audio's never going to be out of sync. It's never going to look shitty or blurry. You're never going to have to buffer right as they're about to have this big emotional moment in the middle of the thing. It's a superior way to enjoy the thing you're watching or you're listening to. It's superior in every conceivable way. Streaming is about the least efficient way to absorb media that there is, because you're completely at the whim of whatever your internet connection is. I mean, when the internet was not working for whatever reason, where I'm from right now, you couldn't watch anything. If you were a person who was reliant on streaming only for your entertainment, all your gaming was attached to while you being on your PS Now account, and all your viewing was attached to being on YouTube and being on Netflix and whatever else, and all that stuff, and all your Spotify is all wrapped up in that, and then that shit went offline, you were fully fucked. You couldn't watch anything. And in that way, they can just turn you off. They can just unplug your fucking modem. And then you can't watch anything. You can't watch anything. If the zombie apocalypse happened in a world like that, you'd never see a movie again. You would never in your entire life see a movie again, because you don't own anything. It's not there for you to have. They don't think you should have the right to be able to decide you want to watch things. If they want to decide, they don't want you to. That's what that is. And you don't think it's possible? It's possible right now. You know, I'm not a political channel, but also nothing's political until it is. They've made all this shit political. They have injected it into everything, and they're just letting it run amok. And yeah, so I've talked for about 30 minutes about that. Now let's just check the thing, because I haven't really been looking at it. Shout out to everybody who's here. What up, Bones? What up, everybody? Netflix really shook up the complacency in the late 90s. Well, Netflix, I don't think, started streaming until, I don't know the exact date, but I think that was later in the mid-2000s. that they started offering streaming when they were doing discs. When it was like mail your disc to you and you keep it as long as you want, that was revolutionary. That was great. That was great. And actually, if you want to know the truth, you can still, right now, with your Netflix account that you have right now, yes, you can do this right now. You can order discs from them. They will send you a disc. You can still use Netflix like that. Like it's like they're still supporting physical media, right? This is where accountability comes into play. Why are they supporting more streaming than the discs? They still support discs. Order a disc. If more people were doing it, they would probably buy more discs. They would probably buy more discs, which means more discs would be getting bought, which would be stimulating that whole economy. So just ordering discs from Netflix instead of streaming every show you can is a useful thing you can do to help support the industry. If more people did that, Netflix would buy more discs, and then that would support the industry, tangentially. That's absolutely useful. And you can get stuff from Netflix that you can't get on streaming, right? So what they have licensed to stream isn't always what they have available, like as discs. They have a lot more available on discs. So if it's like, oh, it's not there, well, go and have them send it to you. They'll get it to you pretty quick, I would imagine, in a day or two. And then you have your disc. And then you can watch it, send it back to them. You don't hardly have to think or fart about it. It's just going to do it for you. And yeah, that would tangentially support it. And you'd be telling Netflix, hey, offer more discs. And they would do that. They would keep up that part of their business. That's important. Sorry, I'm shaking my desk because I'm a clumsy son of a bitch. Honestly, this is where a huge rise in pirating. Yes, because these companies are making the consumption of media so difficult. I'm specifically talking to shows. But yeah, I think especially TV shows in the current climate are especially difficult to support in a way that is meaningful because so much of TV is on streaming services now. The TV people are watching are on streaming services. And what was for movies to DVDs for television was, and no one's going to like this, it was commercials. What made TV shows successful? What made TV companies and publishers and those people, broadcasters, what made them able to take risks on a show? It was commercials. You could have a middle-level show be successful because commercials. Because even though not so many people are going to watch this isn't ever going to be the number one show on TV, but we're going to have a few thousand people that like this show, and that's going to give this advertising value, right? It's just like in the same on social media. You know, you don't have to be the biggest channel, but if you have enough people that watch you regularly, that could make you valuable enough to an advertiser to pay you a certain amount of money to appeal to a few thousand people. And you might not be showing Mr. Beast numbers, but it's enough to make you profitable. It's the same thing with TV shows. TV shows could make money on the advertising, even if they weren't the biggest show ever. By removing advertising, it made shows completely invaluable. There was no box office. There was no renting. It was purely subscribers. Can we get subscribers subscribing, paying us $10 a month, $15 a month, $20 a month to Netflix because they want to watch this show? No? Then get the fuck out of here. That is exactly why there are so many TV shows that just run for 3 seasons and they're done. Or you'll be on season 5 and they're just like cashing out and you're like, but there's all these unanswered questions. And they're like, it's done. It's over. It's not worth the money anymore. It's not bringing in subscribers. We're at the end of the contract. We're done. Putting money into finishing this show to resolve it for the fans who are already subscribed is a waste of money. We'll lose money doing that because there's no commercials. So the way you fix this in TV, what Netflix needs to do, no one's going to like what I'm about to say, what Netflix needs to do, what Hulu needs to do, what we need to have happen to make TV become better again, is to bring back commercials. And bringing back commercials will then make TV shows valuable again and have longevity again, and then shows that you like will get to be done. Right? Ozark doesn't have to get cut off I know they brought it back, whatever, but again, that only became when they realized that was people would resubscribe. People unsubscribed because they were watching Ozark and they cut it off. And they're like, oh, subscribers? Okay. But that's the thing. They would have happily cut Ozark off and left it that way because if it hadn't been that way. So we need commercials because that makes the individual property valuable. If it's a more popular show, it makes it more valuable. That commercial time is more valuable. It will make more money. If it's a smaller show, its commercial time will be less valuable. It will make less money, but it will still, and this is the important thing, make money. Even if it's not why everyone's subscribing. Just because it's keeping people happy who are already subscribed to the service. It will make those people happy. Also, you can buy some TV shows on DVD. Just throwing this out here real quick. I just bought the first season of the Fallout TV show on DVD. So again, there is a thing there, and you can support that. And that again also helps make those properties valuable in a way that they weren't before. So that's just another way you can support your TV shows. So this is good. This lets me kind of fill in some of the holes of what I was talking about before. Best Buy Online. Yes, you can get discs Best Buy Online. Heads up. Good heads up on that one. Thank you for that one. More executives are trying to bring about the rise of AI movie stars and content creators. Yeah, and I have never seen a less favorable reaction to that stuff than the comments on those videos and those posts. I don't think it'll happen. I don't think it'll happen. I think it's too difficult to implement. In a way people will believe. Like, let's say they brought in a person and they did a bunch of fake interviews showing it, and then people somehow thought that this was a real person and that they really liked them. Okay, well, when are you gonna do an interview with this famous movie reporter person or this real movie company, or when are we gonna see you on the red carpet? Like, it will start to become clear that this person is not a real person, I think, pretty quickly, honestly. And I think it's too difficult to pull off without people knowing that they're an AI star. And I don't think there's really anybody in the world who wants that. Nobody wants that. Yeah, I mean, they can train them all they want. I don't think that's going to change whether people want them. And when people know that they're AI, I don't think people will support it. I don't. And if they do, then fuck them. in my subtle, thoughtful opinion. But we just shouldn't be supporting AI. It's a different conversation for a different day. What's up? Kicked a Roomba the other day just for taking away jobs. Good. Let them know who's in charge here. Physical media all day, absolutely. No commercials. I know it's not a popular. Oh, no commercials for physical media. There's that too. If you really hate commercials so much, you can buy your discs. We should still bring commercials back for streaming services so that they can make individual properties valuable again. That's really important for creativity. It makes shows that aren't driving subscriptions still valuable and thereby still worth supporting. That's important. That's really important for creativity to thrive. It might not be everything curtailed perfectly so that the customer is always happy and all on our end, but at least it's not going to be all on their end, and we can get back to something that balances out where it's kind of working out good for everybody, where the publishers can be making their money and the creatives can have the creative freedom they need to become successful and make their place and create shows that we get to then enjoy. And we do have to put up with a little corporate stuff because they need to make their piece too, so we have commercials and this and that and the other thing. But suddenly it's all working together again. What an idea that it would all work together in balanced unison to work for everybody. So yeah. I pro that. I'd have enough for a movie day for at least a decade. Word, bro. Honestly, thrift them. They're overflowing with physical media from dirt cheap. Yes, and I totally support buying used. Go to, I went to my record shop the other day. They sell used, DVDs. Yeah, you can do that. And that isn't bad, especially if you're trying to find a niche thing. But honestly, if we want this to come back in a big way, buying new movies that have come out recently from a store like Walmart or from Best Buy Online or Amazon. I don't love Amazon, but they're one of the only people supporting it. And if you start voting with your dollars on Amazon, by giving them your money, you're saying you should support this. And you might not love Amazon, but the truth is Amazon's not going anywhere. And they're one of the only places this can happen on. And if you prefer Best Buy, go to Best Buy. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is buying new things where those companies, where those publishers are the ones that make the dollars. I understand corporations, maybe not everybody's favorable to that, but they are a vital piece of the ecosystem for it to exist the way that it did when it was working the best. And they need to make their piece for this to work. There need to be enough people doing that. So I'm not saying don't support GameStop. I'm not saying don't support other places. I'm just saying that support is also meaningful right now. I'm not saying not to support your local movie theater. Like, go to your local mom and pop movie theater, but also go to AMC. Go see a movie that came out this week and go to AMC, because if AMC goes under and then all we have is mom and pop coffee shops, or movie theaters, not coffee shops, although go to those places too. But the writing will be on the wall at that point, because those mom and pop movie theaters can't support the industry, right? We will collapse into the streaming world. There will be no movie theaters. The idea of discs will be gone. That revenue stream of the box office is an important part of this thing. And if we get rid of that, then we're in the same place that we are buried in the same place that we are heading to now. We're heading to that place. If we lose movie theaters, we're buried in that place. We're absolutely buried in that place. Go to the movie theater, buy disc-based media, support those kinds of things. It really is important. And yeah, support just start buying from stores again, please. In general, also, in addition to this, just go to a fucking store. Please go to a store before they start turning everything into one giant apartment building none of us actually know how to get out of. Please go to a store. Half price books, that's another great place. I was saying earlier, you can go to Barnes and Noble too. Support Barnes and Noble. You buy a DVD brand new, go buy Wicked for Good if you love that on 4K Blu-ray at Barnes and Noble right now, and you can go in there and get it, and you can feel good shopping at Barnes and Noble. If you have issues with the corporations, go to Barnes and Noble. You can feel good going there. Half-price books, yep. Thrifting a lot more. Good. Yeah, Mindhunters, that was a blow. That was definitely a blow. My mom loved Mindhunters. Mom loved Mindhunters. I watched the one, I can't remember the guy's name, but it was basically like, quick tangent, but he was a serial killer. And the whole time, I can't remember his name. This is the real gist of his story. I'm not an expert on this, but he was just this insane, like, psychotic serial killer. And he was just like, why am I so crazy? Like, I just can't stop feeling that way. Like, he knew what he was doing was wrong, but he was just compulsively drawn to doing it. And long story short, one day, his mother, who was like the worst mom on the planet, just was abusive in every conceivable way, and he just was like, I hate my mother, and he decided to make her go away forever. And he brutally did that, and the feeling went away, and he was like, good gosh golly, mister, I done got rid of my mom, and you know what? Crazy feel's all gone. I feel so much better. I'm gonna go to the police. I'm gonna turn myself in. I'm going to tell them everything that happened, and I'm going to start moving on with my life, because that is a weight off my shoulder with mom gone. And yeah, so that was that was a guy who existed, and I'm super paraphrasing, like none of that's a direct quote, but that's essentially what happened. They did a Mindhunter on that guy, and I remember watching that. Kemper, yes, Kemper was his last name. Alex? Can't remember. Kemper. Yes. Kemper. Good work. Definitely. Yeah. Mark Zuckerberg is... I used to say he's a robot, but I'm sure he's just like a regular alien lizard person. So I've got that worked out. Yeah, you are right. yes, about Amazon. Amazon has too many bootlegged movies and don't do anything about it, unfortunately. Yes, Amazon is still Amazon, and they have the same problems that they had before. I've definitely gotten bootleg movies from them before. It does. I want to point out though that they still recognize that those sales are being made, and I think that that still contributes to overall sale numbers. You know, when they're looking at what people are buying on the site, and so if Amazon wants to support things like Fallout is a Amazon TV show, they didn't have to put that out on Blu-ray disc, but they put it out on Blu-ray because they recognized that there was money to be made there. If more companies see that, if Netflix sees that, they'll start putting out discs of their shows. And then you like it matters. I know I'm not trying to defend Amazon. I'm not trying to say we should love Amazon. But I am saying we vote with our dollars, and these companies have the power, and our power is how we interact with those companies. And if we're saying this is what we value, then they will value it too. Because in the old way, like even just a few years ago, I don't think Netflix or Amazon would ever release their best show, their biggest hit show ever on disc when they have it on their streaming services. Fuck no. Why would they do? You would never do that. That was like so antithetical to the model. But they looked at the numbers and they thought, no, we're going to put out. We're going to put this out, and it shows that they see the value in it. Yes, I see you're saying exclusivity is bad. I'm not saying that I love the exclusivity. What I'm saying is that what it shows is that they see the value of it. Right? And that they're willing to put the money into that. And that ultimately supports, in the long run, creativity. I'm not saying you have to go to Amazon and support their exclusive deals. I'm not endorsing buying exclusive Amazon stuff. I'm using that, and I want to be really clear about that. What I am saying is I'm supporting, or is that that is evidence that they are supporting it. That is evidence that they see value in that. And so by putting our money in, don't buy it. Vote with your dollars. Don't buy the exclusivity. But keep buying discs, right? Show them that that is something that you value. That is something that speaks to you. And the more that happens, the more that helps. Go to Barnes & Noble. You know, if you don't want to buy from an online store, which I think you shouldn't. I support going to places to buy stuff. If it was easier, if there were more places to buy these things right now, I would be telling you to go to all those places. The fact of the matter is that more and more places aren't. So we have what we have available to us. And Amazon happens to be one of the only major retailers that supports it. And that's just the way that is. So I'm not saying you have to support anything about Amazon you don't like, but I am saying that when you buy, even from a different vendor from Amazon, not from even Amazon directly, a thing from their site, you're showing them that this is a thing that people will spend money on, and they will do that. It makes a difference. It makes a difference. So they can either give it to us or make loot, or it will be taken, and they won't be able to cash in. They'll learn. Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing, and that's the other thing we're condemning ourselves to, is pirating. But this brings me back to something I was saying earlier. What makes pirating possible? It's not owning a tablet. It's not owning a smartphone. It's having a computer. Go get a computer. Go buy a computer right now. So you can start pirating, and then you can just steal it, right? Because that's the other alternative. But they are trying to block that. And pirating still isn't ownership. You're still sort of stuck with whatever you get from wherever you get it from. And, there is a way that we can get back to where we were, I think. Like, I think that pirating will only go so far for so long. Like, I think it will make an impact, but I don't know if it will make all of the impacts we want. And right now, they're trying to make it impossible for us to have computers. You can't just go get a computer if you're a regular person. It was already an expensive thing to invest in. And I'm speaking from experience as somebody who built this within the last couple years. It was not cheap. It was not cheap, and it's a lot more expensive now. So pirating, like, yeah, if you have a computer, then you think you're fine. But bigger picture, um, it's not what benefits the masses. It's not what benefits the greater good of these industries. It doesn't benefit the artists. It doesn't benefit the consumers. It doesn't benefit us the way that it doesn't benefit poor people who can't afford to buy a computer. It doesn't really, it doesn't move us in the direction we want to be in. It doesn't move us the direction that we want to be in. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And that's the other reason that owning media, this is a really good point. There's a lot of lost media that there's no alternative for. If you want to see a dead show that never got a release, and isn't streaming somewhere, it's the only option is having some kind of physical media. And that's the truth. And that's how they can censor us, right? They can make a censored version, right? Like, yeah, sure, we let you say that when you made the TV show, but find certain episodes of 30 Rock or of Parks and Rec or The Office, and you can't, and you can say, well, there was controversy about that, but that's still censorship. Like if they went back to the old Disney movies and were like, you know what, that part with the crows at the end of Dumbo, that was a little bit questionable, so we're just going to chop that bit of the movie out. Or we're going to, you just can't even get Pinocchio anymore. You just can't even get it. Same with Peter Pan. People would be up in arms about that because the art needs to exist in the time that it existed in, and it can be used as an example of what was wrong and needed to change. But censoring it is dishonest. And though that is small censorship compared to the kinds of censorship that they could start employing on us if they wanted to. Maybe they look at a movie like The Big Short, which exposed the way all the business people ass fucked us during the 2008 housing crisis. Maybe they just decide that's a movie that, there were too many lies told in that movie. It was just so full of lies, and now that movie's gone. Now that movie's just gone because nobody ever owned it. And nobody ever had. I understand you can get The Big Short on disc, but that's not the point. Imagine if it wasn't. Imagine if it wasn't. And now it's gone. Nobody can ever see it. I mean, that's the kind of censorship that we're open to right now, and it's insane. Yeah, yeah. No, and it's true. There was already a lot of lost media, and this is one of the ways that we have to help keep the history alive. And it's a really good point too. Beyond that, is it helps catalog our stuff. If we lose all of our media, if we lose all of our ways to keep track of these things, like those stories get lost to history and to time. They're not known about anymore, and that I don't know. There's something sad about that, and I don't feel like art should be. I know art is temporary. Everything's temporary. But it shouldn't be that disposable, right? It shouldn't be treated with that level of disposability. Like it's a napkin you use once to wipe your nose and dab your ass and then you throw it away. It should be, shown a little bit more respect than that, I think. Wow, I did not know that. They cut the Uncle Ruckus singing episode from the Boondocks. And that's why you own the full seasons. Yeah. Right, and it's not right. I just don't think it's right. I'm not saying that you have to agree or disagree with anything being right or wrong. Like it doesn't have to change your opinion, but we shouldn't be going and changing it. Like imagine how weird it would look if we went and looked at like a movie like Triumph of the Will, which was a Hitler Nazi propaganda film from back in the day. What if we were just like, we should really cover up a lot of that stuff. There's too much Nazi stuff in here. We don't want people to watch this and think that it's about Nazis, right? We should really pretend that never happened. We should really just cover this all up. We don't need to see all of that stuff, do you? Do you? Do you really need to know all that happened? Do you really need to see that was there? Do you really need to know that was a sentiment that people had? Do you? We don't think you do. we don't think we should acknowledge that that was a real thing that happened. We want to cover that up so that conversation doesn't ever happen. Give it a good old whitewash. I just don't believe in that. It removes our ability to criticize it, right? If you don't see the crows at the end of Dumbo, then you can't criticize the crows at the end of Dumbo, right? Right? And so that takes our power to say that's wrong away. That matters. That matters. So yeah, I'm against most forms of censorship. Freedom of speech matters to me a lot. And this is all just an infringement on that. So we could do so much good by supporting disc-based media. We really could. And you don't see how it's all connected all the time, but it really is. And I'm not necessarily anti-corporation, but I'm anti the way our corporations have become. I think when you have a lot of people like this, corporations become a necessary part of an ecosystem. But I think that the way that I've laid it out kind of shows that there is a way for that to be balanced, and there's a way for that to be imbalanced. And when it gets too imbalanced, one way or the other, it's kind of stops working. It stops working. It doesn't work the way that we need it to. And there's a way we can get back to where we were if the corporations don't need to be so greedy and we don't need so much convenience. We can start lifting up our creatives again so that they can really have creative freedom and make interesting films and art again. And they can make their piece, and the corporations can make their piece, and we can get what we get out of it because we have our piece of it, which is our rights to own it, to observe it and support it, and for it to be something that promotes free speech. It can all be there. It was there. And so I see that as something that can happen again. Corporations aren't inherently evil because they aren't alive. The corporations are as evil as the people running them. And that's what needs to be looked at. Look at our country. Our country is only as good as our leadership is, really. I'm sorry, but we went from Barack Obama to this. And that has 100% to do with who was in charge. Okay? And that is it. Our country isn't evil, but the people running it might be. Corporations are not inherently evil, but the people running them might be. And there need to be checks and balances in place to check them. And they've just been given crazy levels of control, and that needs to be taken back. Like, they need to be reined in. I'm not saying they don't need to be reined in, they do. But it's all part of it. We need to do our part. We're not in charge of that. Unless you're watching this and you're one of the senators in our country, or you're one of the CEOs or people who work at these corporations, there's not a lot the rest of us can do about it. That's on those people's plates. If you want it to be on your plate, you better be on your way. You better be working on that, because that's how you're going to make that change. Other than that, this is how we as consumers can approach it, and I think in a meaningful way start to reclaim our rights. Yeah, and support it how you want to support it. I'm not here to tell people how to support it. I'm here to tell you that you can support it, and that these are the different avenues available. If you want to shop at your local store to do that, do that. If you prefer your backdoor record store, do that. If you prefer to go to Barnes and Noble or shop on Best Buy online, or if you like Amazon, however you like to use it, those are all avenues that you can take that meaningfully support media. I think it makes the most difference to buy new things in terms of showing the people at the top that this is worth investing in, but also I believe in supporting small and businesses, and I believe in supporting used media culture, right? Buying used CDs, buying used DVDs. It's always been part of that ecosystem. They're a vital part of that ecosystem, and they need our support too. Just remember to spread it out is my point. Buy a couple new movies that come out at Barnes & Noble or at BestBuy.com, and that will contribute. If you did that, if you bought 2 a year, you'd be making a meaningful indent in it. Buy 2 new discs. Buy 500 old discs from your local store and make 2 of your purchases from Best Buy or Barnes & Noble or whatever. Or if you're somebody who's grown up without this kind of media in your life, I've met people in their 20s who said they've never owned a disc. Start. If you're someone who can't afford that, I understand. You can't afford that. But if you're somebody who already owns a PlayStation 3, a PlayStation 4, a PlayStation 5, or an Xbox of comparable age, if you have a PlayStation 2 gathering dust, you can play old DVDs on it. There are pathways to get you involved in disc-based media, and even an old DVD, I think, is a superior experience to streaming something. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. It sounds better. It looks better, especially if you got the right settings on your shit. And they can't take it from you. They can't change it. They can't rewrite history. It matters. Let's get back to the spot here. My hot take is that pirating in the early 2000s really hit the bottom line and gave rise to independent artists, people who actually tried to make a concept and plot. The one motto I hear from billionaires is that people need to be hungry to drive innovation, which is interesting because they hoard wealth, so by their own logic they are comfortable and lazy. And that is a fantastic point about their hypocrisy. There is a hypocrisy there. It's possible that some of them might not even be aware of that hypocrisy because they're so entrenched in their bad thinking. Get a solid setup and enjoy. Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, they do need to be drawn in, and we are going to need help from our people, and if that's our political people, our politicians, we will need them to reinforce and recreate legislation that reined them in that no longer exists under the current administration, and even then we need more to be done that reinforces our rights. When you buy a piece of media online, you own that digital copy. Get your DRM the motherfuck out of here and stay the fuck off of me. You shouldn't be allowed to watch me while I'm gaming. You shouldn't be allowed to make me sign into your thing every time I want to play. You shouldn't be allowed to force me to be online in order to play your game. Fuck you with a smile. Go fuck yourself. It should be illegal for them to do that, and that they can do that is wrong, and we need the politicians to step in and be about it. You have no right. You have no right. In the freest country in the world, damn fucking right, we better have a right to privacy. Why isn't that written into our shit? It should fucking be there. You don't have a right to privacy. And why do you think they want it that way? Why do you think they don't want you to have a right to privacy? Why do you think they dragged their feet on your right to privacy? It's not a fucking accident. I'll tell you that much. So yeah, that should all be illegal. And you should buy DVDs. I have been talking for just over an hour. And that's what I believe for today. I think we're going to call it there. Time of death, 2:34. Someone order me a sandwich. I hate this fucking job. And scene. That was the surgeon trying to perform a life or death operation on America's values. It did not survive. Take care, everybody. Stay safe out there. Watch out for the ice. It's slippery. Peace. Be good to yourself.